I just want to make this really clear because I get emails all the time and everyone wants to build their T5, but if you're making too much power, it's just not worth it. You guys might have seen my videos on the T5, but I hate to say this, I don't want to talk about this, I hate to put a bad name on the T5, but I gotta be real with you guys. The T5 might not be good for your project car, and I'm gonna tell you why. I understand some of you out there are already informed and you guys already know how these things go, but for those of you out there, it's your first Mustang, your first project car, and you're looking for a transmission, I just want you to know a few things before you make a decision on what stick you're going with in your car. I just finished up a T5 rebuild for a classic Ford. If you want to check out that video, I'll leave the link below. But this came up in my video and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about it. The T5 was really revolutionary because you went from the 4-speed to a 5-speed with, basically a 4-speed with an overdrive. So a lot of the problems with the classic cars is you're screaming at like 35, 4,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour on the freeway because you don't have that extra gear. Especially if you upgrade the gears in your diff, then you're going to be at a higher RPM when you're cruising. Not only that, but this transmission was the smoothest butter like shifting transmission for its time, and it still is. But the only problem with this transmission is it can't really hold that much power. I can put really nice gears in it, I can add all these upgrades to it, but at the end of the day you're only looking at like 400, 450 depending on the application, and that's pretty much it. Like if you guys want to go racing with this, it'll probably hold up, but it's only a matter of time before it goes out. And that's another thing nowadays. Everyone's making like 600, 700, 800 horsepower, and I get this all the time. People ask me how much to build it, how much is it going to hold, and 9 times out of 10 I'm telling everybody to not even waste your money or your time rebuilding this. Not only is it bad for business, but I don't want you guys to put the wrong investment into your project car. And that being said, I just want to give you a few options of what you can do and what you can put behind your engine. For the most part, if you guys are just going to cruises, spirited driving, cars and coffee, the T5 would be perfect. Like I said before, especially if you have old 4-speed and you want that overdrive gear, it really changes the game. But once you start making 600, 700, 800 horsepower, you need to upgrade to a TKX or a T56 Magnum. And then this is where another problem comes up. A TKX or a T56 Magnum is gonna run you like minimum $3,000 minimum for TKX. This can all vary depending on your clutch, your setup, if you need a cross member, A, B, C, D. But TKX is basically like a beefed up version of a T5. Now, if you guys are really pushing the power, a T56 Magnum is the way to go. I recommend you go that route. But the problem is you go from building a T5 for about under $2,000 fully built to spending 5, 6, 7, 8 grand on a T56 Magnum. So there really is no middle ground here. It's either you build your T5, cruise it, know its limits, you don't abuse it, and it'll hold up. But then again, that's not really fun if you're trying to have fun with your project car and beat on it a little bit. That being said, you're gonna have to drop some cash on a TKX at the minimum, and that's really where it gets tough because everyone's trying to get a deal and not spend all this money. But at the end of the day, if you want something that will last a long time, that'll be reliable, pretty much a one and done deal, then you're gonna have to drop that cash. I just want to make this really clear because I get emails all the time and everyone wants to build their T5, but if you're making too much power, it's just not worth it. Some applications, they do hold up, but it's only a matter of time because this is just not designed to handle that much power. If you look at the size of a gear on a T5 compared to the size of a gear on a T56, it is night and day. It is a big difference. I am a small business. I do not sell any other Tremec transmissions. I am not affiliated with Tremec at all. I'm not trying to get you to buy a TKX from me. I'm just trying to lead you in the right direction with your build. So when I say you need to swap in a T56 Magnum, I'm talking about the aftermarket version, not a factory T56. I think a lot of people get confused because there are factory cars that came with a T56. It's pretty much the late 90s, Camaros, Firebirds, Corvettes, although they are a little different design because of a transaxle. You know, you got a GTO, and then you have the infamous 0304 Cobra, and then the Viper. But if you were to go and look for, say, a 0304 Cobra T56, I want to make this point. Now, just from my experience and the videos I've seen, it'll be hard to find 0304 Cobra that has not been beat on, because once you hear that sound of the supercharger, it's going to be hard to keep your foot out of it. And right behind that is all that power going to your T56, and those T56s have been beat on and beat on and beat on. So by the time you bring it to me and I open it up, it's gonna need a lot. And at that point, usually nowadays everyone's swapping Whipples on there, they're making crazy power, and you're already pretty much at the limit at that factory T56. So buying a T56 Magnum, the Magnum is the aftermarket version. It is basically a TR6060 on steroids, and that is what you're looking for. That is the strongest Tremec you can buy as far as I know. People ask me this all the time too, like, hey, if I buy a Viper T56, and what do I need to do to make it work in my Cobra or my Foxbody, blah, blah, blah. There's so many parts you gotta swap out. It doesn't make sense financially or with labor, and you know, how much you're gonna spend in parts. You're better off just buying a Magnum because you're having more power, everything's brand new, you're not using old parts and trying to make something work. So I'm just telling you guys how it is. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground, and like I said, you got to stick with the T5 until you can afford some cash on a Magnum. And I honestly think that is the best investment, especially if you want to make more power or plan on making more power. Run the T5 now. You know, it's always fun to build your car, but have room to grow. So if you know you're building your car, 300 horsepower, you know, whatever, I might supercharge it later. Okay, put the T5 in, cruise around, enjoy it. When you want to go throw on that supercharger, turbo, whatever, have that cash ready to buy a T56 Magnum TKX. Now, another thing I want to talk about, you have the next step up from a T5 is a TR3550. And if I remember correctly, they came in a 95 Cobra or Cobra R, and that had a 351 in it. So the torque rating was a lot higher than from a T5. So that was like the next best thing you could get. And I still see them popping up for sale. And then again, like the T56 Magnum versus a factory T56, Tremec went ahead and made a TKO 500, TKO 600. And those were a better version of the 3550. Now, I have under my bench right here a TKO 600, and it's got a blown cluster and a blown out third gear on the main shaft. Now, the reason it's sitting under my bench is because nobody makes replacement gears for the TR 3550s and the TKO 500 600s. So I get this question a lot too. People ask me if I have any of those in stock, and then I explain to them that, you know, it was only a factory car. I believe they came in GM stuff, but I'm not too familiar with GM stuff. I'm mainly a Ford guy. So we had it in that Cobra R, and then Tremec made aftermarket versions. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you bring me a 3550 or a TKO and you got a blown out gear, then there's nothing I can do to fix it. You cannot go out and buy extra gears. That being said, if somebody's claiming that they're selling a rebuilt 3550, the gears are the same. The gears were never changed. Not a full rebuild. Yeah, they might change bearings, synchros, all that, but there's only so much you can fix in one of those transmissions. So I cannot fix one of those. So if you're looking for one of those transmissions, just be aware. If you can't see inside of it, if it's not a part, then you're really taking a big risk, because you could end up with, pile of junk, because that's as good as they are right now. Until somebody makes gears for it, I cannot rebuild them. And it really doesn't make any sense, because you can go online and buy a brand new TKO 500, 600. I don't know if they made a bunch of them and they're still trying to sell them, or they just want you to go and buy a new transmission and they don't sell the gears. I don't know. I wish they did. It would be better for business. But until Tremec, until an aftermarket company decides to start making gears, then there's nothing I can do. And I wish there was a middle ground here, but it is what it is. If you're really dead set on fixing your TKO or even your 3650s, I'm not even going to talk about T45s, because they were only available for a few years. Only make synchro and bearing kits for those. 3650, same thing. I believe Hanlon Motorsports makes billet shift forks, which can help, especially if you're doing a Coyote swap. That is a great budget transmission. They don't make gears for those either. So if you're emotionally attached, if it's like, family car or whatever, and you had that transmission forever, best bet is to find another core, and we can make one transmission out of two. These factory Tremecs are almost an endangered species, so every time I do a rebuild, save a stick, save a manual, go bang some gears, because I don't think they'll ever stop making them, but some of these factory ones just bite the dust, and there's no available parts. A few tips you can do if you're going to buy a transmission, a used transmission, you don't know if it's any good. You can't just take the seller's word for it, because they could have got it from someone else and they said it was good and they're just passing it along. I do have a video about that, I believe, but I'm just going to tell you guys again. You can go on Amazon, buy a camera, a borescope, and you can put it in the fill or drain hole, and hopefully you can move that thing around in there and try to get a good look at the gears at least. Because if you got good gears, then you're in a good position for the most part. Because that's the only way. People tell me, oh, it's been rebuilt and it's good to go, but you really don't know until you put it in the car, and then you'll know what kind of issues you're having. Or you run on a dyno. I don't know many people that have a dyno. If you got a local transmission shop that, they can run it for 50 bucks or whatever and see what condition it's in. But the true way to know is to either put it in the car or to rip it apart and inspect all the parts. Hopefully I didn't go off topic a little bit. Hopefully you found this information useful, and whether if a T5 would be a good addition to your project car or not, and that's up to you to decide. I'm gonna get back to work. I'm busy. I got stuff going on. I got a TR6060 in here out of a 2013 Camaro SS. I'm gonna be pulling that apart and seeing what I can do to fix that. So watch another video, and maybe you'll learn something else.